On the peaceful shores of the Sea of Galilee lived a hard-working fisherman named Simon. Every day before sunrise, Simon would take his boat out into the water to catch fish. Fishing was not only his job, but also the way he provided food and money for his family. He was experienced and knew the sea well. He understood the winds, the waves, and the places where fish usually gathered. One evening, Simon and his fellow fishermen prepared their boats as they always did. They carried their nets, lamps, and tools into the boat and sailed out into the dark waters of the sea. The night was quiet, and the moon reflected softly on the waves. They threw their nets into the water again and again. Each time they pulled the nets back into the boat, they hoped to see them full of fish. But every time, the nets came back empty. Hours passed. The fishermen became tired and frustrated. Their hands were sore from pulling the heavy nets, and their bodies were exhausted from working through the night. Still, they continued trying because they depended on the catch to survive. By early morning, the sky began to turn light blue as the sun slowly rose over the hills. Simon sighed deeply as he realized they had caught nothing. "We worked all night," Simon said sadly to his friends, "but there are no fish today." Disappointed and tired, the fishermen returned to the shore. They began washing and repairing their empty nets, preparing to go home after a long and unsuccessful night. At that moment, a man arrived at the shore. People from nearby villages followed him and gathered around him to listen. The man spoke with kindness, wisdom, and authority that amazed everyone who heard him. That man was Jesus Christ. The crowd around Jesus grew larger and larger. People wanted to hear every word he spoke. Because there were so many people pressing close, Jesus stepped into Simon's boat. He looked at Simon and said gently, "Please push the boat a little away from the shore." Simon agreed and pushed the boat a short distance into the water. From the boat, Jesus began teaching the crowd gathered on the shore. The calm water carried his voice clearly so that everyone could hear him. Jesus spoke about God's love, faith, and the importance of trusting God even in difficult times. The people listened carefully, amazed by his wisdom and compassion. After Jesus finished speaking to the crowd, he turned to Simon. "Take the boat into deeper water," Jesus said, "and let down your nets for a catch." Simon looked surprised. He was an experienced fisherman, and he knew the sea well. Fishing during the daytime was usually not successful, especially after a long night with no fish. Simon replied respectfully, "Master, we worked hard all night and didn't catch anything." For a moment he hesitated, but then he added, "But because you say so, I will let down the nets." Simon and the other fishermen rowed the boat into deeper water. They slowly lowered their nets into the sea once again. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then suddenly the nets began to move. Simon and his friends felt a strong pull from the water. Fish. They quickly grabbed the ropes and tried to pull the nets back into the boat. But the nets were extremely heavy. Splashed inside the nets. "Something is happening! There are too many fish!" shouted. Another fisherman cried. The nets stretched so tightly that they began to tear. Simon quickly waved to the fishermen in another boat nearby. "Come and help us!" he shouted. The other fishermen hurried over and helped pull the nets into both boats. Soon, both boats were filled with fish from one end to the other. The boats became so heavy that they almost began to sink. Simon stared at the amazing catch of fish. Just moments ago, the sea had seemed empty. Now it was overflowing with fish. Simon suddenly realized that this was no ordinary event. This was a miracle. Overwhelmed with awe and humility, Simon fell down at Jesus' knees. "Lord," Simon said, "please leave me. I am a sinful man." Simon felt unworthy to stand before someone who had such power and authority. The fishermen were amazed and frightened by what they had witnessed. But Jesus looked at Simon with kindness and compassion. "Do not be afraid," Jesus said gently. Then he spoke words that would change Simon's life forever. "From now on, you will catch people." Jesus meant that Simon would no longer spend his life only catching fish from the sea. Instead, he would help bring people to God and share God's message of love and salvation with the world. Simon and the other fishermen looked at their boats filled with fish. It was the greatest catch they had ever seen. But something more important had happened that day. They had witnessed the power and presence of Jesus. When they reached the shore, they left their boats, their nets, and even the great catch of fish behind. They chose to follow Jesus and become his disciples. From that day forward, Simon's life changed completely. He traveled with Jesus, listened to his teachings, and helped spread his message to many people. The miracle of the fish was not just about providing food. It was a lesson about faith, trust, and obedience. Simon had trusted Jesus even when the situation seemed impossible. Because of that faith, he witnessed an incredible miracle. The story reminds us that sometimes life can feel like a long night of hard work with no results. We may feel tired, discouraged, or disappointed. But when we trust God and follow his guidance, amazing things can happen. Just as Simon's empty nets were filled with fish, God can fill our lives with blessings when we place our faith in him. And that is why the story of the fisherman's miracle continues to inspire people even today.